Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's small business webinar. My name is Paul LaChapelle. I'm with Montana State University and happy to welcome you all to our June small business webinar. I'd like to just remind you that we are recording today's session and we will post it at the web link that you can see in the chat box. If you have any questions, we have two presenters today. Feel free to type those in the chat box and we'll take the question. Our presenters will take the questions at the end of each of their presentations. You can also unmute your mic. Ask that you keep your microphones muted for now, and you can go ahead and unmute if you do have a question. You can raise your hand. There's an option to do that, and then unmute yourself. Today's webinar is sponsored by Montana State University Extension Community Development, the Montana Economic Developers Association, the Small Business Development Centers, which are affiliated with the Montana Department of Commerce and U.S. Small Business Administration, with additional support from the Great Falls Development Authority and the University of Montana. If you do have any tech support questions, I've listed some information in the chat box. Again, you can access that chat box. It should either be in the lower right corner of your screen, or you can hit a little icon on your the center of your screen that looks like a little circle with a bump out at about 7 o'clock to enable your chat. Feel free to call or email me if you have any tech questions. You will, as I mentioned, have an opportunity to provide questions or comments, and I'll be monitoring those again in the chat box, or you can unmute your microphone. Now I'd like to introduce today's speakers. Dana Johnson is the Regional Director, SBDC with Big Sky Economic Development, and Kevin Scharf is the Rock 31 Program Manager and Senior Business Advisor for SBDC, also with Big Sky Economic Development. They're both coming to us from Billings today. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Kevin, and let me just make sure that you are that you've got the privileges here to bring up your presentation. So give me just 1 second to do that.
Great, thanks, Paul. Looks like I'm good to go.
Sorry for the delay there. There you go. Go ahead and.
Paul, can you see that slide? All right.
You are good to go.
Great, let's get started. So I have about 10 minutes to run through this presentation that usually takes about an hour, so bear with me. So the information that I'll be covering today comes from the world of behavioral economics. And one of the things that the world of behavioral economics has shown us over and over again is that our environment does in fact shape how we behave. Or more specifically, our environment shapes our decisions. And so the next logical question to ask us after hearing that environment shapes our behavior is, what specifically from a scientific standpoint does our brain need to make a decision? And thanks to many wonderful neuroscientists and psychologists, we have discovered that our brains in fact need emotions to make decisions. And so what our emotional networks do is they prioritize all of our options, or they assign values to our choices. And so on the left-hand side here, I have a really primitive visualization of an active emotional network that's working to prioritize options. And then on the right-hand side, we have a brain that does not have an active emotional network. And so we're still receiving that information. Our logical networks are still working in the right-hand side. But we don't have a system to decide which option is better than the other. And when you think about this, it does make sense that we would use emotions to help through this process. But it's important to note how we as business owners are working consciously or unconsciously to shape the perceived value of our business, ourselves, our employees, and what we're selling. And there's a lot of great examples of big companies that have taken this notion very seriously and then made important pivots to ensure they're shaping the environment of their customers. And one of the best examples is McDonald's in fast food industry. After documentaries came out like Super Size Me, they realized they needed to make a pivot. And so what they found is that customers were looking for an experience where they felt like, again, they were getting fresh food, they were getting fresh ingredients, it was artisanal. And so they actively worked to shape that entire environment. And look at this beautiful McDonald's on the upper left-hand side. Like, look at it inside of it. It just like screams designer, screams artisanal. And they even use that word over and over again, artisanal grilled chicken. But the reality is that their hamburgers are the same. They haven't changed anything there. They still have the hamburgers, French fries, and a pop. And that's actually what a lot of people are ordering. But they feel like, because of what McDonald's has done, is that they're getting a more artisanal experience. And so what's funny is that Morgan Spurlock, that created Super Size Me, saw fast food restaurants doing this after he created his first documentary and decided to do another one. And this time he took it to another level. He actually created his own fast food restaurant. So for those of you who've seen Super Size Me 2, you've seen this, called Holy Chicken. And he used those same techniques that fast food restaurants use, that health halo, is what they call it, where you get that perception of everything is really healthy. But he also laid out the truth. And so in all of the signage, if you actually read some of the fine print, you'll see things like introducing flavored char. So fake grill marks, you can see here, are an old industry method that tricks the brain into thinking fast food is more appetizing, more flavorful, and actually homemade. But the truth is that everything is deep fried and we just paint the grill marks on it. So he's exposing this truth here in a very clever way. And so I encourage you to take a look at that documentary, Super Size Me 2. So whenever I hear information like this in a webinar, like really good, interesting, novel science, I'm always fascinated by it. But then I also at the same time wonder to myself, okay, great, love the content, but what specifically can I do tomorrow? What can I do differently? And so what Irrational Labs, a company out of San Francisco, has done is they've actually put together a methodology for what you as a business owner can do differently, understanding that our environment does shape our behavior, does shape the behavior of our customers. And so they created what's called the 3 B's of behavior change. And the first B in this process is identifying key behaviors. So the key behavior is a specific and measurable action you want a customer to take. And I've gone through this exercise with a number of business owners. And one of the things that I found is a problem here, or a mistake that happens often, is that business owners mistake this for an outcome or like a general action. But you actually really want to make this very painfully specific. What exactly do you want your customers to be doing differently, right? Because that's really what we're talking about when it comes to selling, is there's a current behavior and you want to somehow persuade that customer to adopt a new behavior and then purchase your product. So get really clear about what exactly do you want your customers to do. And then the second B is what barriers can you reduce? So barriers are that friction that prevents that customer from doing that key behavior. And in a minute here, I'm going to go over some examples of this with an actual scenario. And then the last one is, how can you amplify benefits? How can you, even through like a bootstrap methodology, how can you amplify what you're selling? You don't have to go through what McDonald's did to amplify those benefits, but there are ways of going about this. So how can you encourage and motivate your customers to do that key behavior? So let's take a look at an example of how we can pull off this 3 B's of behavior change. So let's say you own a coffee shop and you have a new pumpkin spice latte. In our 3B scenario, let's say your behavior is you want a new customer, again, that's very specific, not just any customer, a new customer, to ask the cashier for a grande pumpkin spice latte. So we know the size, we know the target market, and the new customer, at least generally, and then we know the specific product that we want that customer to purchase. So we have identified the behavior. And you could even get more specific here and actually identify a clear target market, like you want a male or a female, a certain age group that has a certain type of job to purchase this. That would be a great addition to this behavior. So now let's talk about barriers. So the question here is, people are not currently purchasing my new pumpkin latte because why? So first, we could always talk about time. Time is the easy one. It just takes too much time to purchase. Maybe there's an energy component. It's just too much of a hassle to go through this process of maybe getting in your car and so on, find a place to park, and then getting inside your store. Of course, there's a lot of these emotional components around fear. And this is a big one right now because of COVID. Fear, they're scared they won't like the latte. Fear it costs too much. Fear it looks like it will cost too much. Fear there's too much sugar. Scared it'll make them fat, right? Or maybe it's more like a cognitive overload thing where they don't even know that it exists, or they forget about the latte when they order. Or status quo. They normally just grab coffee at work, they put it off. Or it's a social proof thing where they just don't see anybody else with the pumpkin spice latte. And so they need a little bit of that social proof to push them over that edge. So once we've spent some time thinking through this process, and I would encourage you, if you are a business owner, to go through this process and start thinking through some of these barriers to entry with your customers. And again, the time, energy, fear, cognitive overload, status quo, and social proof. Those are some of the overarching barriers. So now the next step is, what can we do to reduce those barriers and then amplify some benefits? So first, if they don't know it exists, you could put together a large ad poster with a photo inside and outside. You could post this poster next to the menu, put flyers on the table so people remember the pumpkin spice latte when they order. We talked about how maybe it takes too much time to purchase. Of course, you can't necessarily do what fast food restaurants have done and build a drive-through. But there's other ways, right? Maybe you could deliver. Maybe you could set up a scenario where you could purchase the latte and then arrive at the store and be able to pick it up right away. You could also work to reduce some of those fear components by providing free samples. So if they're scared they won't like it, they get to try it for free. And then encourage people to post reviews. So you've got that component as well. And then the cost too much. So if you're in excuse me, I'm not sure what just happened there. If you're in a position where you just can't reduce the cost of that latte, you could think of other things like a punch card, something where people could use over time. Let's see, we got some other examples here. So it looks like it costs too much to purchase. You could advertise a discount. The status quo barrier, they normally grab coffee at work, donating a percentage of the proceeds to a nonprofit. They don't like lattes with lots of sugar. Like clearly state there's a sugar-free or reduced sugar options. They put it off. We talked about the buy one, get one deal, and then have that be today only, right? Put a time frame around that deal. And of course, a lot of these examples you've seen before, and it's because they work, right? So it's not necessarily about new information in here for you. It's just about like, what plan can you put in place to ensure that you can start to boost revenue? And it's based off of a model that you know that works. And so for those of you who are running a business and thinking through this whole process of like, how can I reduce some fears? How can I get people back into my store? How can I get people to purchase my products? I also want you to think about the experience that your customers have, and note that you should be striving to make that experience better than expected. And from the neuroscience perspective, experiences are like a neural price tag that can actually change over time. And so if you encounter an experience that is better than expected, you're much more likely to recommend it, you're much more likely to talk about it, and much more likely to come back. So thinking about that with COVID right now, how can you really ensure that someone who's taking that risk to come into your store does have an emotional experience that's really positive? I think one of the best examples of this, and I'm running out of time here, is Wingtip. Wingtip has done a phenomenal job. There's this company out in San Francisco of shaping this environment. It's not just clothes that you purchase. There's a bar available. There's a barber shop. And so when customers go into the store, they're not just purchasing a shirt or pants. And so that's my presentation here wrapped up. And we'll then hand it over to Dina to do the follow-up.
Great. Go ahead and pull up your slides.
All right, thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Paul. I'll do that right now. All right. Paul, give me the thumbs up. Can you see that screen?
Looking good.
All right, great. Well, thank you, everybody. I'm excited to be following Kevin's presentation, especially with the topic dovetailing so nicely. Environment shapes behavior, and so we're going to transition into talking about what does that mean? What can I do today to help shape the environment of my business and what that looks like? On your screen there, you see a logo that says open and safe, and we're going to be talking about that as we move forward here. But I wanted to point out that Kevin Scharf, who you just heard from, is the designer of this logo, and so we're very proud of that. All right, on our next screen here, I want you to just sit for a second, take a deep breath if you would, bear with me or indulge me, and just ask yourself, how does that make you feel? For some of you, you're thinking, I'm calm and relaxed. Maybe for those of you that are John Denver fans, you're singing Country Road, Take Me Home. That's a favorite of mine. I'm a bit of a geek when it comes to that, but definitely Montana girl. All right, everybody knows how we're feeling. We're going to move on to the next screen. Now, how does that make you feel? We see a sign, we're on this country road. We see cardboard sign that says farm fresh eggs just ahead. I'm thinking I'm going to go get myself some eggs. I don't know about you all, but that would be appealing to me. How about this sign? What does that make you think? Well, if you're me, you're thinking the plane might be taped together with duct tape. There might be a couple of you in the audience that are thinking, oh, cheap flying lessons, that sounds great. You are our extreme risk takers, but many of us might be questioning, or at least at minimum be curious as to what exactly the plane would look like. All right. So if we move forward and take those thoughts into more of a serious note of mitigating our risk and taking it seriously, one size does not fit all. So on those signs, what we saw with the egg cardboard sign was something that maybe worked really well for selling eggs, but not so much for flying lessons. What's unique about our circumstances now is that we all have many different business models, organizations, things that we're approaching, and it really isn't a one size fits all. Yet we have these standards and guidelines from the governor's office, our county tribal health office, our industry associations and what have you, all kind of telling us what we need to do. And it's hard to really kind of put all that together and figure it out. But the best possible way to mitigate your risk is to take it seriously and to understand what your own model should be. And so we do have listed here, we're not going to go through all the guidelines today, but it's important to know where those are at and to be aware of what they are. We also want to point out that We've been in lots of conversations with governor's office, county health officials, county attorneys, and what have you. And the messaging is consistent that the guidelines are laws. They are not, hey, by the way, you should think about this. They are laws and they're treated as such. And so when you're thinking about mitigating your risk, regardless of how you feel about them, whether you believe in them or agree with them or want to follow them or not follow them, they are laws. And so that does shift the conversation in terms of mitigating your risk, both from the health standpoint, the economic standpoint, and the legal standpoint. And so when you're thinking about your planning today, as we go through and talk about these steps, I want you to think about, how do I mitigate my risk regardless of how I feel about the guidelines? Here's another website where you can go to get your specific county requirements. As many of you know, the state provides the guidelines, and then counties have the option to be more restrictive if they choose to do so. And so we recommend that you connect with your county to find out what that conversation is. They're there to support you. They believe in the businesses in their community and want you to be set up for success. So it's their goal to come alongside you and to help you do that. Your SBDC in your region also is available to help you better understand. All right, so what is this all about? Shaping environment and having a conversation, and why are we here today? Local business owners in our community got together and said, we want to take this seriously. We want to take the guidelines. We want to tell our consumers that we're taking it seriously, and how can we do that? So I'm just going to read the language that's listed on this flyer here, because I think it's important to say it out loud, the message and the commitment. We are committed to keeping Yellowstone County healthy and our economy strong. To help in this effort, we are frequently sanitizing all surfaces, encouraging social distancing, managing occupancy, and monitoring our employees' health. That's a powerful statement. We're committed to doing this. Below that, it says, please let us know if there's anything else we can do to make our space safer for you. This is an invitation from the business owners to have a conversation with their consumer about how they can shape the environment and make them not only feel safe, but be safe in their space or their business, whatever that looks like. We're excited because this was a social movement of business owners, everything from the language and coloring to communicate that message. It has spread across the state and continues to be something that we're sharing across our SBDC network with clients. You can reach out to your local SBDC to get a copy of this poster. It is an editable document, so you can insert your county and your language, phone number, or whatever else you'd like on there. On the left-hand side of the screen, you can see a photo of Soup and Such here in Billings. Mike Craighill has done an incredible job of posting this signage and really following everything he can to possibly pivot and communicate with his consumers. As you'll see in his sign there, he's a soup and salad buffet, which, as many of you know, is no longer an option. Buffets are not an option. And so he really had to pivot. He had to figure out, what are we going to do? And so they created a website, they created tableside service, they call themselves the Salad Genies. They go up to the table and take the order, and have really created an environment where not only are they following the guidelines, but they're creating an open and safe experience, and they're communicating that to their consumers. So we applaud his effort and his sign, and wanted to share that with you today. The next photo here is of a local business also here in Billings, Bumps and Bumbles. Like my daughter calls it Bumbles, and now I just did too. It's her favorite store. Bumps and Bundles here in Billings, owned by Becky Salyer. And this is another great example of communicating to the consumer. You can see the open and safe sign there in the window, and then also pivoting, which with all of the things that have been happening, as many of you know, you're all doing this, you're hustling, you're pivoting. It's making that open and safe experience available, whatever it is that your consumers want. And at one point, the store had to be completely closed. And so Becky really leaned into her website, her online sales, her social media, her communication. And so she's been open and safe all throughout this. And now her physical store is as well, taking steps with her staff. They are choosing to mask, sanitize, keep the 6 feet, make sure everything as you walk through the store is safe and ready and open for business. This is another local business in Butte, Montana. Mirror Mirror is committed to being open and keeping the community safe. As you can see, this is a Butte Silver Bow County Health commitment, and we're excited to see that she is there and ready and open for business. As you can see, this is a social movement. It's small businesses of all sizes taking this pledge. All right, so we've talked about the communication, the signage, and being committed. So how can we be committed and successful? Having a standard operating procedures is really important. Have a plan and show your consumer exactly what you want them to do. As you can see on the floor here is a gymnastics business out of Great Falls, and they've communicated exactly what they want the consumer to do, to stand 6 feet apart. And they're training both their staff and their consumer what it is that they expect. Having a written plan, whatever that is for your business model, is important. You can take the guidelines and then put those into procedures. I'm going to speed up just a little bit here. I see I'm running a little low on time. Again, this sign here, what is it telling the consumer? Exactly what they want them to do, and that's to wait here. Next, our recommendations is to have a copy of this policy, whatever it is, readily available. Maybe it's 5 things, whatever those 5 things are, have it available. Have it in writing at your counter or check-in, whatever that is, so that consumers have it available. It's important to have scenario-based training with your staff. I'll give an example of an event venue we had some individuals from our community tour to learn what they were doing, and they were creating scenarios in terms of what it is that they were going to require. And so they're going to take temperatures of those guests coming in, and if they temp over a certain amount, they're not allowed to enter. Well, the question was raised as, okay, we're going to do that, and that's great if it's the third cousin twice removed of the bride, but what if it's the father of the bride? Are you going to tell him that he can't walk his little girl down the aisle? What does that look like? Having a plan in place for those things that could come up is really important, and helping your staff know how they're going to address those situations is also important, because if you're going to have a policy, you need to be able to follow it. And not only that, but your staff needs to understand what those next steps are. Next recommendation is photos and a sign-in sheet if applicable, and a manager log. These are defendable steps. If you were to land in court, God forbid that would happen, it could. Having photos of everything that you've done to follow the guidelines, keep your consumers and staff safe, and do everything you can to mitigate risk. That's going to be your best defense. Does it mean that it will be everything you need to win a potential lawsuit? Maybe, maybe not. But it is something, and the most that we can do to shape our environment is to communicate what's expected, follow through with it, and then have documentation of what you're doing. And that will also help you learn and grow as time develops in terms of what works and what doesn't. All right, tried to speed it up a little bit there, but that is all I had for you today on the open and safe. We're very excited to be a part of this statewide focus. We thank you, business owners. We know you're hustling out there to be open and safe. We know many of you are already doing all of these things. This is a small piece to say this is what we can do. We'd encourage you to reach out to your Small Business Development Center in your region to learn more, to get some checklists and more specific steps if that's something that you're needing, or if you have outstanding questions about this. Paul, Kevin, that's all I have on my presentation today, and I'll turn it back over to Paul for, looks like we may be close to out of time, but if we have a few questions, we might be able to take those.
Sure. Time for questions. So I'll encourage our participants to Either type them in the chat box or you can go ahead and unmute yourself. And hopefully your mics are working or your phone is working and you can connect with us. So please go ahead and type your questions in or unmute yourself.
Paul, this is Jason in Great Falls, and Kevin or Dean, I can answer this. And since Becky's on the call too, and I can see her name, maybe she can address this. But kind of what we've talked about in terms of building consumer confidence, like, are these things working? Are you getting feedback? Maybe Becky, you can answer the question: is this working for your customers? Are they coming back? Are you seeing repeat sales, or are you just seeing one person come in and then you never see them again?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely have a lot of customers commenting on how well they thought that our like setup and reopen process was. I feel like now that we're in phase 2, we definitely have like been trying to help people I mean, we've seen more people come in, so we're trying to help people understand we're a safe place to be still as phase 2 happens as well. We've even had people state, that they feel more comfortable coming into our store than they feel going to places like Target or Scheels or things like that, where there might be heavier traffic, because they know that there's more of a limited amount of people coming in our.
And are you getting any pushback from people who think that you're overreacting?
I think that people have actually been really kind. The people that maybe aren't as worried about the COVID numbers, I feel like they're understanding that what we're doing is to be there for people that might be susceptible, first of all, with grandparents and pregnant moms shopping in our store. So people have been pretty nice. I think wearing a mask sometimes has I don't want to say has offended people, but maybe they've been a little bit more turned off by a mask than anything else.
I'll just keep asking questions until somebody interrupts me. So, are you at all concerned about the liabilities that you may face?
I don't think that I let myself get too stressed out about stuff that I can't control. I think that I can prove pretty well that we have been wiping down our door handle. We've been wiping down our card reader. We've been wiping down our countertop. So, as far as stressing myself out about things like that, I feel like I try and put my energy elsewhere just until something like that arises.
Thank you for sharing. I appreciate it. It's nice to hear entrepreneurs, in other communities. What's working, what's not, what your concerns are, what keeps you up at night, things like that. So thank you.
Yeah, definitely.
Any last questions? We have a from anyone else, feel free to type them into the chat box or unmute yourself. Well, Dina or Kevin, do you have any parting words for us or any other thoughts that you'd like to share?
I'll just say thank you. Thank you, Becky, for being on and everything you're doing for your business. To all the business owners on, we're here to serve. Our goal is to help you. What can you do? And so our entire team across the state looks forward to helping you in any way we can.
Absolutely. And also, when you're thinking about a lot of these new strategies, when you're thinking about it, is the best time to schedule a time to actually work on the plan. It's so easy to put stuff like this off. You're overwhelmed as a business owner. I get it. There's a lot to think through. So even working with your SBDC advisor to put together a plan and say, hey, I just need some help thinking through this. I encourage you to reach out. They're there to help you when you need it. Thanks for all coming, and appreciate you listening. Bye, y'all.
Thanks, Kevin and Dina, for the really useful information and presentation. We'll see if there's any last questions. And seeing none, I think we'll call it a day. Thanks for everybody for joining us. We'll be in touch with the recording link on our website. Feel free to join our listserv as well. And we'll look forward to sharing more information with you with our next webinar. Jason, thanks for everything and helping to host. And we'll see you at the next webinar. Thanks, everyone. Be well.